Hello and welcome to this tutorial on fostering life meaning. So this tutorial is adapted from the second part of Chapter 7 in Mastering the Clinical Conversation, Language as Intervention. You can find other resources on the clinical applications of RFT at languageasintervention.com. In this tutorial, you will learn about identifying meaningful actions. So in the previous tutorial, we talked about life meaning from an RFT perspective, and we saw that to build a meaningful life, we need to find sources of reinforcement that are positive, intrinsic, and overarching. This kind of reinforcement can be found in overarching goals and qualities of action, which are then integrated at the top of a hierarchical network. We also saw how we can use RFT principles to identify overarching goals and qualities of action. In this tutorial, we are going to talk about identifying meaningful actions and specific goals, that is, the base of the hierarchical network. For a big part, this work consists of reversing the process that we use to build the top of the hierarchy. For example, instead of using hierarchical framing to climb up the network, we can climb it down, starting from an overarching goal or quality of action, thus deriving the parts from the whole. For example, the therapist could ask, what could you do that would be part of developing intimacy in your relationship? Or what could contribute to increasing independence in your life? The aim is to help the client come up with at least one action that is connected to the source of meaningful reinforcement, such as calling a friend or doing some job search on the internet. We can also use conditional framing to identify steps towards specific goals. For example, a therapist could ask, what is the first thing you could do to get closer to finding a job? Or, what is the next step you need to take in order to be able to spend some time with your children? Dialectic framing can be useful to increase awareness of potential actions because perspective-taking shifts help look outside the box, take some distance, and see things we didn't see before. For example, using temporal perspective-taking, the therapist could ask, 1 year from now, what actions would you like to remember having done with compassion over the past year? Or using interpersonal perspective taking, she could ask, do you know a person who is compassionate? What are the things she or he does with compassion? Is there something she or he does with compassion that you might feel inspired to do too? Another important aspect of our work on identifying meaningful actions is to broaden the range of possible actions, including actions that require a lot of effort and others very little effort, or a lot of time and little time, and so on. The purpose of increasing variability at the base of the hierarchical network is to ensure that there is always an action that is available at any time and anywhere. What makes an action meaningful is its hierarchical relationship with an overarching goal and quality of action, not its size, even though, of course, the size can be important in terms of achieving certain specific goals, like getting a degree to have a job. So one simple way to increase the range of possible actions is to use coordination framing to identify other actions serving the same purpose. So therapists could, for example, ask, what are the other things that you could do that would also contribute to what you care about? Using distinction framing is helpful to discover alternative actions. It helps prepare the client to difficulties that might make a given action unavailable at some point. So, for example, the therapist could ask, if you can't see your friend tomorrow because she's not available, what else could you do that would still contribute to social connection? Or, imagine something comes up and you have to cancel your plans. Are there other things you could do that would serve the same purpose? And finally, using comparison framing will help discover actions of various amplitude. For example, the therapist could ask, is there something easier than traveling that you could do and would also contribute to exploring? Or what is the most difficult and easiest way to connect with your kids? The goal is to help the client come up with a fairly broad range of actions, some of which will be easy or quick to do, and others more effortful or time-consuming. Here is a summary of the main points you've learned in this tutorial and that I encourage you to remember. So in order to be connected to overarching goals and qualities of actions, we need to identify actions and specific goals that are integrated into the hierarchical network. We can use hierarchical framing to derive parts from the whole, conditional framing to identify steps towards specific goals, and dialectic framing to shift perspective and increase awareness of potential actions. In order to ensure that there are always meaningful actions available at any time and anywhere, we need to broaden the range of possible actions at the base of the hierarchical network. This can be done by using coordination framing to identify actions that share a similar purpose, distinction framing to discover alternative actions, and comparison framing to discover actions with various amplitudes. This is the end of this tutorial on fostering life meaning. This tutorial was adapted from the second part of Chapter 7 in Mastering the Clinical Conversation, Language as Intervention. If you want to watch the next tutorial on sustaining motivation, you can go to languageasintervention.com. You will also find other resources on the application of RFT for clinical practice.